You're listening to Kizuki, the podcast. I'm Mae Yoshikawa, and I define the Japanese concept of Kizuki as the following. Kizuki 1. A moment of epiphany, an aha of realization or insight which opens the knower to a new dimension of truth that was formerly unknown. 2. Steps in an incremental growth of awareness, resulting in a movement from ignorance to greater awareness of the bigger picture. A kind of knowing that cannot be undone, that cannot be unrealized. As a longtime yoga and meditation practitioner, a world traveler, and curious self-explorer, I'm obsessed with Kizukis. Listen on each week for inspiring and enlightening stories that may just tip you over for your next aha. On this week's episode, make a splash. You know how kids on trains just get bored? The other day, my son Aiden, a 7-year-old, and I were riding a local train here in Tokyo. It was just the two of us, and a few stops in, a little boy about 5 years old hopped on with his dad. I thought, okay, well maybe Aiden could sit next to him, and at least this way they would both have someone to play with or talk to. So I switched seats, and Aiden sat next to this little boy. Soon enough, the boys got to chatting and playing, and so the boy's dad and I had a little chat too. We found out that the little boy was a big train lover. And then the dad noticed that Aiden would occasionally speak to me in English, and he said, "Wow, that's impressive." And Aiden, in his matter-of-fact tone, said, "Yes, I go to an English-speaking school." So the dad was like, "Oh, that's nice. My son was born in London too, but we live in Japan now and we don't speak English at home." And I smiled and I said, "Wow, kudos to your wife for giving birth overseas. That was probably not easy." And he's all nodding kind of shyly but proudly. And he says, "Yeah, she was amazing." It was just one of these casual, spontaneous, sweet little connections that we happened to have on the train. And then our stop came. Aiden and I got up to get off, and as it turned out, so did they. So the four of us stepped out onto the platform, and we started walking in the same direction toward the station exit. And that's when it happened. Aiden suddenly turned to the dad and said, "My daddy died." Just like that. You know, not in a sorrowful way or anything, just he blurted it out. There was a moment of silence, and the dad just kind of took it in, but he didn't quite know how to respond to that. It wasn't like a heavy or emotional confession. It wasn't like deep condolences were called for a 7-year-old. It was just kind of a surprising truth that sprung out in the moment. And so the dad kind of shifted the conversation over to something else, and we walked a few steps more, and then we came to this part in the station where we would part ways, so we said goodbye. Can you imagine what you might have done if you were in my shoes? Now, I'll be honest. I had this slight reflex come up, like a piece of me wanted to tell Aiden, hey, maybe next time, don't just blurt that out. I felt tempted to kind of pull him aside and, maybe teach him a little thing about social timing or something. But then, maybe not. Something in me stopped myself because why? Why should he not say it? Because it's the truth for us. His daddy did die. My husband died in a traffic accident years ago, and I've been raising 2 boys on my own ever since. More than that, here I am, having walked through my grief, rediscovered and recreated who I am beyond the loss of my husband. And more recently, I became the founder of our nonprofit, I Know Grief. And it's about raising awareness about grief in Japan, where so much of these feelings are still so suppressed. And in the cultural context here, it's almost kind of taboo to talk about it because it's a difficult thing to talk about without disrupting social harmony, put it that way. So in my own way, I have kind of risen above all of that. And now I talk about it in my work, in my writing, and in my life. So suddenly there was this discrepancy. Why would I be so open about it in my work and in my public appearances? And then why would I teach my son to keep quiet in an intimate, spontaneous train encounter? Something about that just felt off. So instead of taking the opportunity to, convey this social norm to him, I asked Aiden, just purely out of curiosity, hey, that was an interesting moment to tell them about Dad. What made you want to say that? And Aiden said, they became my friends. I thought they should know. That was it. So simple. There was no shame, no stigma, no awkward apology. Just isness. Just truth. And the Kizuki hit me. If I, as someone who openly speaks about grief, still feel that impulse to protect strangers from this truth, what does that say about me and this awkward moment? Like, what was the awkward moment really about for me? What was I really trying to protect if it wasn't about me hiding from the truth in some way? And it made me realize I wasn't trying to protect myself. In some weird roundabout way, I was trying to protect him, the father of this 5-year-old boy, from some awkward moment of social discomfort, from not knowing what to say. And then I realized, but you know what? That's actually not my problem. That's his issue to figure out. That's society's issue to figure out. And if I overextend myself to try to protect him from that awkward moment of not knowing what to say in the face of the news of death, this avoidance of discomfort would be enabling him and the entire culture of silence that the culture, society has built around things like grief, death, around the hard truth. And That's exactly why I raised my voice. That's exactly why I started my nonprofit, because so much of the modern world, when it comes to grief literacy and learning and knowing how to meet the truth of death in presence with care, we are so inexperienced. Why? Because in so many ways we've been taught to hide it, conditioned to hide it. Kids don't. Aiden didn't. He said what was true because it mattered to him. And the simple matter-of-factness of his blurting this out, like he didn't care about social timing, it just revealed how children don't have these pre-installed beliefs around how social moments should go or how they're supposed to go harmoniously. They just are, and they just let it be the way it is, awkward or not. And it was just this beautiful, like, eye-opening, like the scales have fallen off my eyes kind of realization. And I could confirm to myself, you know what? Be more like Aiden. Be simple. Be true. And just be you. No hiding. No making sure everyone's going to be comfortable and harmonious around you. You know, like none of that extra fluff. And maybe, if you're listening, you might take this opportunity to reflect on that too. Are there moments when you shrink from saying something true about who you are, or owning your story and owning how you feel and the choices you've made in your life? And, you know, if it's about being ashamed or wanting to hide for your story, maybe there's something to look at there for you. But if you're perhaps like me, being overly mindful of how it might be received in society, how it might land for someone else, you know, maybe the question for us is, why not make a splash? Because if you're going to be my friend, you're going to know sooner than later, my husband died. It was awful. It broke me. I couldn't survive that as the same May that I was before it happened. It was dark, it was long, and I don't know how I did it. But I've learned to live, not just despite it, but because of it, I am who I am today. And that's the story of my recreation, my coming into who I am today. And the same goes for my children. Bottom line, there's just no sugarcoating it. It's death. It's real. And if it hasn't happened to you yet, it will, because it happens to everyone. Why hide it? You know, to anyone, in any place, at any time, spontaneously or not. Because, see, I want to trust you to be able to handle it, to be able to handle truth, just like I've learned to. And you know what? If I can just kind of step out of myself for a second here, I want to live in a world where we can trust each other with our truths, whatever it is, whether it's death or loss or disability or queerness, you know, like anything. And chances are some of these things will stretch you, but why not let it stretch each other? Why perpetuate a culture that hushes certain things over others? You know, Maybe you're grieving in a culture that's not willing to name it, like I was for a long time. Or maybe you're different in a room that feels closed-minded. Or maybe you're choosing a life that others don't expect and you're just having to carve out your own path and stand alone. Sometimes these things, they ruffle feathers, not just your own, but for other people too. Maybe being your whole self does make a splash. And maybe that's exactly what we need to do more of. Because sometimes making a splash is the most honest, necessary thing we can do. I long for a world where we connect with each other deeply in a truer, more real way. So awkward or not, comfortable or not, you know what? Go and make a splash. You just do you. I'm going to be behind that all the way. Thank you for listening. Learn more about me and my Kizuki Journaling Mae Y method at my website, kizukijournaling.com. That's KIZUKIJOURNALING.com. Or find me on Instagram at MAEYOSHIKAWA.